Well, all right, I'm sitting here at Afterburner Brewing here in Terre Haute, Indiana, and I got the four co-founders here for a fun conversation today. Thanks for doing this, gentlemen. Cheers.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Let's start it all off. There we go. Well, good. Well, I appreciate you guys doing this, and one of my favorite jump-off points anytime I do any of these sit-downs is to kind of get a flavor of your origin story. And you guys have a very interesting one, so I'd like to see how and hear how Afterburner came about and how you guys met and all that jazz. So, what do you got?
Well, I'll start it off there. I guess we'll just go on. We all met in the military. We were all part of the 181st Intelligence Wing out there. It did change over from the 181st Fighter Group. All Ranks Club out there, which is an on-base facility very similar to this. We'd all volunteered to run it at one time. We worked together, and it's kind of where we got into. We were all home brewers and decided, someday at some point, and here we are. So.
Yeah. We it was just kind of our place to go at the end of the day. Didn't have to go out to the bar, but we had our own little place on base, and we'd kind of go there, and that's where, at least personally, that's where I got more into craft beer. And then maybe 8-ish years ago, kind of started doing a little bit of home brewing, and it just got out of control from there.
In a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. Yeah, finally.
Oh, there you go. Now, with all you guys being veterans, how does that military experience shape what you want the client experience to be for the patrons that walk through your doors?
Well, obviously, since we are veterans and we mostly identify with veterans and first responders, and some of the things that we did and saw while we were on active service is it kind of relates to the first responders and the veterans. It's something you can't really explain to somebody that's not been or done it or seen it. It's just kind of like an unspoken kind of respect, I guess, and acknowledgement. But that said, we want everybody to enjoy our beers. We definitely identify with the military vibe, first responders. So I think that those folks will probably embrace us a little bit differently. But the local populace is just anybody that loves good beer and just loves to come hang out in a cool space. I think we're open and we want all of that. So it's we're not obviously exclusive to veterans and first responders. So, but I think they do probably identify a little bit more closely with us and kind of what our goal is. Longer term, I think we'd like to be able to give to. Once we make a little bit of money doing this and this place is paying for itself, be able to give back to some of those causes, the veterans causes, first responders, wounded warrior, that kind of stuff. So,
I think actually even our first beer out the door was a collaboration that was where we had donated proceeds. Strength was the name of the beer, and we did put Backstep Brewing Company out in Crawfordsville. They're some firemen, and we worked with them and for suicide prevention. And so right out, our very first thing out the door, we had made penny one, and we were so
part of the Who's Your Buddy project, which kind of took a back. They didn't really do it last year. We're hoping to revitalize that and kind of encourage other Indiana breweries to get involved with that. And that was an Indiana, project or I guess started here. So not here, but I can't remember who started it. Somebody over in Indianapolis, one of the breweries there, had a friend that committed suicide, and we're like, let's do something to kind of help raise awareness for suicide prevention. And so obviously that was a cause that we identify with pretty closely. Being military, there's a higher number of military veterans that commit suicide than the general populace, and it's something that we obviously identify with pretty closely, and we wanted to support and kind of help raise awareness for that. So
that's fantastic, man. That's great. Another one of my favorite questions that I always like asking is, obviously you can see, the theme of the particular brewery that's emblematic in the names of the beers. And you guys got an interesting looking taps over there, and your names of your beer are very military focused. So how do you guys draw? What's your process to coming up with the names of the beer that make your lineup?
Most of the time, we're just sitting here doing this. And,
Great way to do it.
We got a lot of really good names that are they're kind of, we're saving those for a special day. But a lot of them are inside jokes. But for our core lineup, we had to pick things that are kind of like core phrases that are associated with the flying wing in particular. If we haven't spoken, bingo's a fuel state needed for recovery, so that's when you got to bug out and go home. The Hanger Queen's a jet that's kind of perpetually broken. Midnight is a loss of command and control. That's a 9.5% Imperial Stout. So,
Aptly named.
Couple of those, yeah.
Aptly named for sure.
and then we have a Splash. Splash is when you observe a bomb hitting its target. So it's kind of a hot bomb, but it's a little pale ale.
That's what he's drinking right now.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Very fresh.
Very fresh.
Then we got, Mock is our house IPA. Mock obviously is, speed of sound. So with that one, it was kind of easy to play on. We've got, Mock, and then we've got Mock 2. It's like a double IPA. And then down the road, we have plans for Mock 3. But, just kind of playing catch up on getting the taps filled and, having enough beer to operate. Once we can, I guess, breathe a little bit, we'll, dip into some ideas on brewing Mach 2 or Mach 3 rather.
Right. Even with our dry stout, which we just put on, we did a small batch of it. It's Joker, and Joker obviously being March, Leprechaun's kind of a practical Joker, but Joker's also a fuel state. Just before you hit bingo, you're a Joker, so you've got time for a little bit more,
one more maneuver,
a little bit more play time, or maybe reach
the
the
warning, and then bingo, you're playing for home.
It's kind
maybe
of a radio call. If you're when you say that phrase, everyone knows you're not going to be around much longer. You got to go.
So that's and in the future, and hopefully, once we get caught up, like Dustin said, we can, on our menu, we'll have a little QR code where you can scan it, and it kind of goes and gives the backstory behind the beer name or whatever. Because we're doing, we like to educate people. Obviously, we're, acronym, military, and probably every industry, a lot of acronyms, a lot of words that mean things that don't, that are different. So we want to be able to kind of help educate whoever comes in, and oftentimes if there's a story behind the beer, it makes the beer a lot. I don't know if it makes it taste any better, but it's a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah. So our ASB wasn't. It's named Botter. It's after a Royal Air Force pilot, Douglas Botter, and he has an exceptional story, and just kind of embodies the idea of being a kind of service before self mentality.
Yeah.
And he just had a cool story, so we named one of the most traditional English beers you could probably make. We decided to name it after somebody like him. So may not be a brevity term necessarily or anything like that, but tell a story about somebody and give a little bit of insight to different parts of the culture that we've lived in for so many years. And craft beer has crossed so many other cultures, and like we want to mingle with everybody and kind of share our side or give some insight to what we've done.
That's a great
Our
idea.
story.
It's a great idea, providing the background on it.
I mean, and people love it. Like, we had some Air Force vets in the other day, and they were drinking a beer, and we told the story, and these are guys in their 60s and 70s, and they're like, I have never heard that story before. But I mean, it's a remarkable story, and something that sometimes you just kind of happen upon things. Sometimes we're force fed it by training, whatever. You got to learn about the OODA loop. You got to learn about it. So anyway, it's pretty neat, and it just kind of, it's just something that makes us a little different.
That's fantastic. Well, you all have what you said as a homebrewing background. I always like to ask, what was the first craft beer that hooked you? That maybe expanded your palate for the first time? Because as people that have heard me on the podcast before, when I was in college, it was all about getting a case of Natural Light for $13.99 at the local store, and then I had a Fat Tire for the first time, and I'm like, oh, what the hell is this? And then leads me down to Sierra Nevada, and then to some of the English Browns and all this stuff. So what was it for you guys?
Oh boy. For me, I started homebrewing when I was at Indiana University in 2002, and I really liked Bass Pale Ale. Couldn't afford to buy it, as a poor college student. But then shortly after that, I was still homebrewing, moved up to Northwest Indiana, and had Robert the Brews for the first time. And I was like, whoa, that was a game changer. Like, that was it still is a fantastic beer.
Sure.
My palate's changed a little bit, but it's still, like, got to be one of my favorite Scottish ales. It's out there. So Robert the Brews was it for me, probably.
Oh, this is a tough question. I remember drinking Fat Tire early on. I don't know that that's the beer that kind of like woke me up to craft, but I remember it, certainly outside of, the Bud Lights and the macro beers. I don't know. I would say that or probably something from Stone.
Oscar Blues was
Oscar Blues.
big when we were getting Goodnight.
Goodnight from Oscar
1050,
Blues was one of those early beers that I kind of would scoop up every chance that I got. I'd buy that beer. It's still, if they make it, I think maybe seasonally now, but it's probably still a good beer. Probably still a great beer, but I would say probably something from Stone or Oscar Blues was kind of really where I started on in craft beer.
Yeah, Arrogant Bastard really had a
Oh,
very full flavor
Love
for some I had that from Stone. Yeah.
Love the story that the little story on there. You probably won't like this. It's just like, I don't care. I mean, it's just kind of, that was the mentality. It's like the in your face, like, we're going to brew what we want. And that's similar with Oscar Blues. The 1050 is like, F the industry, we'll do it ourselves. That's so it's like, that's kind of a cool part of the beer culture.
And we still drink our cheap beer. I mean, this place was built on hams and Busch Light.
Yeah.
So
It's a shame because when I was younger, I just had to steal hams from people. Because they got to pay for it.
It is still pretty cheap. It is pretty cheap. We
had a
needed
lot
that.
of homebrew time or
We needed to save that money.
small batch time in the last 2.5 years until we as we were getting this place going. So hams and Busch Light have certainly they're equally responsible for making sure this place happens.
And on the tight schedule that we had it.
Yes, and the tight schedule we had. Yeah.
How about you two?
Being in the realm of three Floyds, obviously you can't deny what they were doing at the time. Zombie Dust was something you had to have. Alpha King, Permanent Funeral, Dreadnought. I mean, some of my first home brews, I named them after, those beers.
Tricolor.
I had my first attempt at a Zombie Dust was called Living Dead Girl.
Great name, by the
and
way.
stuff like that. Just Dreadnought was D28. So I like to play music. But I mean, those were huge hop influences. And then I've always liked Old Rasputin as a North Coast brewing, and that kind of changed my approach to what stouts could be, and being commercially available, it made it pretty easy to come by.
It's still a good shelf turd, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I bought a couple 4-packs within the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
So
It's funny you mentioned Three Floyds. When I was still wholesaling, I would route my Chicago trips to come back through Munster on Wednesdays, where I could get my 2 cases of Zombie Dust, because you couldn't get it anywhere around my neck of the woods. If it did, it was a 6-pack here, or you'd be lucky to get a
single
212
bottle.
Yeah. So. It's just crazy how that time frame, and because back in the day, we've gone from 40 breweries here in Indiana at the start of the 2000s, and now there's over 180. So it's
awesome.
crazy to see how this community in Indiana has kind of
And
fostered
and some good ones too.
Yeah.
I mean, the craft beer awards, Indiana did pretty well. I mean,
Yeah.
we had some good breweries. We actually, it's kind of funny you said that because we had Butch reroute his trip from Wisconsin to here so he has to go through Savoy, Illinois, and pick up a case of Triptych.
Ah.
He's a
There you go.
He's
So
our
we think alike.
Yeah,
That's right.
absolutely.
Beer lovers think alike.
Yeah, absolutely.
Quite a Smokey and the Bandit kind of thing, you know? Like a truckload, but yeah, a couple flats.
Very nice.
Some good triptych.
It's a great pit stop.
Very nice. What was yours, Butch?
Same. Gosh, I started with Bass. Was kind of, if I have to think back, I know there was more, but I remember when I finally could get hold of Bass, I'd do it. But then I do work out of Chicago for my real job. I hate to say, one day this will be my real job. Okay.
Yeah.
But I too would drive up to Chicago, work out of O'Hare for an airline. I'll just put it. But I too would stop at Munster. Back in the day, we had put on. We got hold of some 3 Floyds back in the day when, even to this day, if it hadn't changed, I know that we would get kegs of 3 Floyds out at our club on base because we were one of the early customers. These guys, so hence, even bars in town go, we can't get it. How you guys get it? Well, we were just one of the early customers. But yeah, I would too. I would stop through there, and so I'd have to say 3 Floyds is probably the biggest influence on, when I really went, this is what it could be,
Yeah.
When I've been up in Chicago, sitting reserved for my work, Goose Island was up there.
True.
So obviously big places, but you go in and go, this is all like a brewery theme. It really kind of set the tone, even really back then. But, I've had a chance to be around. So to be honest, there's a chance I'm going to go to Athens next month. There's a great little brewery there. There's something home for us.
Nice. Now you said influences, and that leads me to my next question. As you guys were kind of planning and bringing this idea to fruition, is there any specific breweries that inspired you? And if so, who and why?
I did the inspiration to do this the way we want to do it it's kind of self-generated, but the approach to hops nowadays in the craft beer industry kind of is like a major driving force, at least in the way I changed my brewing style. And most of those you find in the New England area, and that's where all that craze came from. Which
Treehouse.
Probably the biggest fault was ever calling them IPAs or pale ales, unfortunately, because your traditionalist doesn't think they kind of compare to your old school West Coast IPAs. But those
They don't.
inspirations, they don't. Well, but to call them the same is not really fair to how they're presented to people, and they've opened up a whole nother world of hops to people that West Coast didn't do because they were too bitter for a lot of folks. So now these are a lot more delicate, and they approach, and those breweries like the Alchemist and Bissell Brothers and Trillium and Treehouse and
Monkish,
all those, all the old
on the West Coast,
but yeah, those places were, you wanted to make beer and use hops in the same way they were doing. You try to anyway.
Yeah.
They're the godfather.
That's kind of funny at that point. Early on, we would go to beer fest and we'd have some of our beers, and just that was one of the things that we like to do. Like if somebody comes up and is like, well, I just don't like IPAs, and what do you recommend? Like, and then we pour them something like that. Like, oh, that's really good. What is it? That's an IPA. So I mean, it's just kind of like
Yeah.
But people have that perception that
Sure.
like it's gonna piney, super bitter, which we love that as well.
Yes.
I mean, Pliny the Elder, some of Stone's, some of Stone's work is, they're fantastic.
Dogfish
But-
had 90 minutes.
Yeah. But it's just different. So we like to do that because we're trying to we want to educate people. We're trying to convert people to drink beer and drink good beer. And when it's well executed and it's a good product, then people will do that. So we kind of I mentioned to you earlier about our blonde ale. It's not a traditional blonde. It's actually right now it's pouring really hazy, I think. But we dry hop it with a bunch of hops, but just to kind of give it aroma and flavor. And so It's kind of a gateway beer, trying to get people that normally would drink a Busch Light, Bud Light, nothing wrong with those, but it doesn't have the character, the flavor, the aroma that Hanger Queen has. So that's kind of another fun part of it, is to kind of educate people and let people try different things, and maybe they do like something that they think they don't.
Yeah, that's more of a gotcha.
Yeah.
Why don't you try this? Well, it's wonderful citrusy,
Yeah.
floral character.
Almost juicy.
That's
yeah.
hops.
Turns out you do like
Gotcha.
hops. Yeah.
Very nice. Well, that's great. One of the things, because we have such a burgeoning brewery scene here in the state of Indiana, I always like highlighting some of the newer places. So if you guys had to pick a newer operation other than yourselves, obviously, in your own blends, what are some of the new ones, maybe a group in the last 1 to 3 years that's come out that you like and support, and they maybe likewise do for you guys here?
Gugman for me.
Yeah, I'd say Gugman House. They're just cranking out fantastic beer after fantastic
Right.
beer.
And we like hazy beers,
Yeah,
and they
regardless of the
they
styles.
execute it. They execute it well, but I mean, and they have a bunch of really good ones. So.
You're gonna be sitting down with them in April.
Yeah,
So
they're great folks, and they have ties to Terre Haute also, which is kind of cool. So
Yeah.
You have a Terre Haute tie too, right?
Yep.
yeah.
I grew up here.
So yeah, they're solid. I mean, there's a lot. Moontown, they've been around a little bit longer. Moontown's they're doing some great stuff. I mean, we're pretty. We Centerpoint kind of took us under their wing early on. They do some really good traditional style stuff. I mean, it's just there's a lot. There's too many to mention, really. Everybody's kind of doing their own thing. Triptych is pretty fantastic. They're over in Illinois, but I know we're talking Indiana, but they're not that far.
Sure.
They're closer than some of the other breweries. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good ones out there. So
Two Toms is cranking out some really good beers too.
Windmill.
Windmill
Yeah.
up in Dyer. Yeah.
So I mean, and getting to participate in the beer fest and stuff, we get to meet and introduce them more and more of them, which is pretty cool. So, and segue to that, we're having our first beer fest here. We're co-hosting with our friends down the street at Terre Haute Brewing, shutting down the street in between us and them.
Yeah, Anthony was telling me about that.
April 30th. So I mean, it's pretty neat. And we got several of the breweries that we just mentioned we're going to be coming and participating. So looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Well, I love asking this next question because in my day gig, I work with a lot of different business owners in all types of different fields. And especially from you guys having a career in the military now coming, I always like to ask, is being an owner-operator different than you imagined it would be? Because a lot of guys start down a lane through passion and just ingenuity and grit, but then when they get the business up and running, sometimes it's a completely different mindset. So is being an owner-operator different than you thought it would be?
My family, we had a family business. My dad, Weymouth and Son, for many years. So I guess a little bit I had seen my dad's struggles and successes over the years. So I kind of knew what was happening. And just to be clear, too, I'm kind of I have another job. These guys are so these are brains and brawn. That's shiny stainless stuff. I'm virtually not allowed to touch. And if I walk back there, one of these guys is 3 foot from me to make sure I don't do much. But I do think that, with that said, we'd sit down and talk about these things, and there's always going to be a surprise, and then, there's more coming. But that's just part of it. The military was, that old cliche, but, overcome, adapt, and you learn from it. That's the biggest thing. Okay, we learn from that, and then we move on, and understand there'll be struggles, and that we keep enough in reserve that we're not, that we're waiting for the next thing to happen, I guess.
I'd say it's, I think because we're kind of unique in that none of us rely on this for income.
Which is good.
And we're all, with the exception of Butch and his day job. The other three of us are retired, so we just kind of get to take this from a very I guess, much more relaxed approach than I think most people probably get to the privilege of. And I don't, from my perspective, like, we expected, the three of us, and Butch when he's here, like, we all chip in on brew days. We all, we pick our days, we kind of pick the schedule on, what days we're going to bartend, stuff like that. So it's kind of what I expected, but, certainly, still learning, still, trying to fill things out. We've only been open a month, so
Right.
We certainly don't have everything figured out, and and the month we've been opened is, statistically a slow month in this industry, as far as people in the tap room. It's cold, it's stuff like that. People aren't out as much, so
Well, hopefully we'll come out of that very rapidly.
hopefully
Coming out of the last 2 years,
so
right?
warmer weather's coming, and it seems that the everything of the last 2 years is almost not even spoken of anymore. It just it was like a light switch. It just turned off, and it's not a thing anymore. So I think we'll pick up, and we'll certainly learn a lot as it gets busier, and things warm up and people start coming out more.
I think it's worth mentioning, we've kind of been in a soft opening in this last month, and we're going to do, is willing to say that we're looking at a grand opening coming up next month. I don't know if we've published the date yet, but
We've
that's
not
part
had good luck publishing dates.
Our original sign said coming in 2020. I mean, and honestly, that question is a little loaded, because had you asked this a month and a half ago, like, I don't know. Because it was granted we weren't, we didn't rely on this for income, which was good, but we sure put a lot of money into it, and we had one issue after another. So when we were finally able to open on Groundhog Day, it seemed very fitting for us. And quite honestly, the HVAC company finished getting the cooler prepped and ready to go. I think they turned it on at 11:30 p.m. for us to open the next day. So it was like, it's been one thing after another. So it's been stressful. It's definitely, we've kind of taken it in stride. We've definitely been in some, other hard situations throughout our career, but it definitely is. It's a different feeling to have the doors open, see people in here drink and talk to people. It's just different. So
I think to what he was asking, and to the point you just made, is that transition from what we used to do to what we're doing now is we've all worked with each other butted heads with each other
yeah,
and on significantly more I wouldn't say difficult. Difficult, important is relative to your perspective. But,
Sure.
But we've had to operate at a high level for very different reasons. So when you just have to sit in a brewery and make beer and and taste test some beer, it makes it feel a little bit lighter.
yeah.
On what you do day to day. But now we have the stress of you don't have an entire wing of airmen supporting you to get the job done. It's just us getting it done, our families.
That's great. When I worked for SunTrust way back in the day, I had a line of business manager that used to be a Green Beret, and he was stationed down in South America. And each Monday morning meeting, they would always ask, "How's everybody doing?" He goes, "Well, my socks are dry and I'm not getting shot at, so it's a good day." So it's a different perspective, right?
Yeah.
For sure. One of my favorite questions to ask, especially those that come from a homebrewing background, is obviously your taps are your successes. But part of homebrewing is you have failures, right? So give me a funny story around each one of you that maybe had something you were thinking that came out, you thought was good on paper, but just came out dead on arrival.
about everything I made.
Yeah.
So the first time you're drinking a bingo, as am I and John, and we have a pitcher in front of us. The first time I made bingo, well, I'll back up a little bit. The first beer I ever brewed, which was like, just the default that came with my homebrew kit, it was a pumpkin beer, and it was like pumpkin beer should likely be dumped anyway.
I just threw up my mouth.
And this one was just categorically flawed in every way.
It wasn't good.
But the first time I brewed bingo, I was at that point in brewing. It was maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. I'd been kicked out of my house to brew, and I was now doing it all in the garage. And I got drunk and I forgot to hop it. And somewhere in my, drunken stupor, I realized, hey, I should at least get it into a fermenter. And to this day, it
Still
is
sitting there, right?
still sitting in the fermenter. Because I did not pitch yeast. Again, I drank too much. And it soured. It got this beautiful pellicle on it, and on one hand, it may be one of the great sour beers of the world. On the other, I maybe should have dumped it years ago, but I'm sticking by it. I'm gonna let it sit and do its thing, and
That fermenter may be sitting in there for the new owners when they sell your house.
It might. I'll at least keep your beer. That was a
It could have been where it started.
It was a beer that didn't turn out good. I just, and maybe the worst part is I was by myself brewing that day, so I didn't even have a buddy to get drunk with. I just drank too much on my own, and I forgot to add hops. I didn't pitch yeast. I somehow remembered I should put it in a fermenter, and 2.5, 3 years later, it's still sitting there in the basement, just tucked back by the furnace, doing its thing.
Right on.
It's crazy. I mean, you should have went last.
I should have.
I mean, I started on a stovetop with the extract kits down in Bloomington, either buying them from Butler Winery or Worms Way, and boil overs, and just, I mean, it's hard, not knowing early on, not knowing the science. And of course, and this was like 2000, so the homebrew industry has also grown as the craft beer industry has grown significantly in the last 20 years. Homebrew as well. I didn't know that I was supposed to treat water or use RO. I did. So yeah, there were a lot of really bad beers. There were some that turned out okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, boil overs and all that. It just, there's a lot of. There's one thing about brewing, though, and I think one thing that we stick by here is, you can't be afraid to dump a batch. If a batch isn't worth drinking, dump it.
Yeah.
Cut your losses, and we've done that on our big system. I hate to say, but I mean, it happens. But we're not going to try to sell a beer that's not quality and that we wouldn't drink. So.
I don't know if it was a failure, but it got me in the doghouse for a minute. I had a Imperial Stout, not unlike what we've morphed into our house Imperial Stout, and to that point, I'd never brewed a beer with that kind of fermentation profile. And it's an English yeast strain, which is incredibly active, and a wise home brewer told me to stick it inside of a tote, your fermenter inside a tote. So if it does boil over, or not boil over, but if it does froth over, it'll catch in the tote. It actually, the sugars actually made it clogged up the blow-off tube to the point where the vessel built up pressure and it blew the airlock out. spackled the wall and the ceiling with the stickiest Russian Imperial Stout residue that you could ever imagine. And then the tub, had 3 inches of beer on the top of it, and I only ended up getting like 3.5 gallons out of it. But it tasted pretty good.
That said, I don't think Butch has ever made a bad beer.
No. It's probably because any of the beers I probably never even tried any of the beers that I finally finished. But actually, I started early. Like I said, these guys were the pros here, but I dabbled in it. Was doing the stovetop stuff, and because of the job that I had then, I couldn't spend. I'd be gone home for 3 days, gone for 4 or 5. Well, sometimes you only think you're going to be gone for 4 days, and I came back, and in the guest bathroom where I had something aging out, I had the same thing. There was a slight overpressure on something, and it's not just that it happened, but then it got to sit there for days. It took even longer to clean up, and that's kind of what I figured. I'm going to need different time frame or different jobs, so I have the time frame to do this right. And so I kind of set it aside until these gentlemen called me here a few years ago. And I get to learn from the best. So.
We in this setting, our big it wasn't really a mess up. Well, the actual legitimate screw up, we dumped it because it had no intention of ever being the beer we would ever want to serve. But our second attempt at brewing on this brew house was our house pale ale, and which is called Splash. As I explained earlier, that's when your bomb hits a target. There's kind of a range. So a pilot doing his maneuvers on a range. There's a rangeism when they're making their approaches and stuff. They get a score, and if it doesn't hit within a certain radius, it's called unscorable. Well, that beer, it got oversparged. We collected too much volume. We were under on our density. Everything about it was supposed to be Splash, and it turned into be a beer that we always wanted to make, which was a very, very sessionable, but very, very strong hop type hop forward pale ale. So it was this little fella, I think, was
4.5?
Yeah, 4.5%.
Yeah. Good lawnmower beer. Kind of like an all-day IPA, but a little different.
Yeah, but a
pale.
lot more. Not the way subtler bitterness. But we made the beer we've always talked about trying to make on complete accident, and so we called the beer unscorable because that's the term. And then the fact that we were trying to make Splash, which is a report for hitting target, we missed the target, so we called it unscorable. And then lo and behold, people loved it.
Well, and the funny, to go into that story a little bit more, there are two fighter pilots that I know pretty close. Butch is one of them. My brother-in-law is the other. And so when we knew the beer was going to be okay. It was going to be drinkable and a good beer. And we had some hops that we've been wanting to use anyway that Hop Snyder sent us. And so I called, I texted Butch. I was like, hey, what's it called when you miss a target? He's like, what do you mean? I don't think there's a word for it. So and then my brother-in-law, I shot him a text like, hey man, what's it called? Like when you shoot at a target and you miss. And it was like, so this, obviously Air Force fighter pilots never miss a target because they don't know the word for it. So then finally Butch is like, well, if you're on the range and you miss by a certain amount, it's just called unscorable. I'm like, okay, so there is a term for it. Thank you for admitting that.
Yes, the range officer will call it.
And he hadn't flown.
Over 6.
Yeah, he hadn't flown fighter aircraft for 10 years. Maybe 15. It's like, come on, man. Anyway, so that just goes to show how good our Air Force is. They never miss a target. So anyway, but unscorable. We'll admit when we miss a target, we missed the target, but it was still a really good beer. Now that fortunately, I think we took good enough notes, we can somewhat repeat it.
Hey, was it Bob Ross used to say there are no mistakes, they're just happy accidents?
Right,
man?
well,
Name that one shack, because that was the term.
yeah.
If you hit the tank in the middle of the bowl, that was a shack.
Not a happy accident, but I'll give you just one more story for this one. It was the second or third time I'd brewed beer, and I was still brewing on my stovetop, and it was an imperial stout. And it was the first time I experienced that you can boil over. Mm-hmm. And so the boil over ran down the front of the stove. All right, so like a good husband, I cleaned up the boil over, but some of it ran down the inside glass of the stove. So also like I guess a good husband, I tried to remove the front glass on the stove to clean it, only to find out that that tempered glass doesn't take much to shatter, and it exploded. Glass was from one end of the kitchen to the other. It was a nightmare, and it cost about $250 to get somebody to come put new glass in and fix. And I was in the doghouse.
Were you drunk in that one?
No, I wasn't drunk in that one.
I'm serious. No barley.
This
No
was
barley
days.
wine.
Yeah, no barley wines.
Did you get the beer cleaned up?
This is
though,
the
right?
days before
Well,
barley wine.
in some regards, I got the beer cleaned up.
Oh, good.
You know,
There you go.
brand new glass,
That's
had no
important.
beer stains on it, and whatever. But those shards of tempered glass all across the kitchen, yeah, they were pretty gross. So
That's
it's a good thing that I've, I guess, graduated.
Careful.
From brewing at home to brewing in a more controlled environment.
Yeah.
I'm still
No tempered glass around here, is there?
Yeah,
Well,
I'm still the
there-
one
there
that's
is.
prone to. I'm still the one that's prone to messes and whatever. But
We have hoses and drains for drinks.
yeah, it's a
so-
lot easier.
First
to
thing we
clean
put
up.
in was a shower, right? I mean,
Yeah. One of the first things we did was install a shower. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a must for any brewery. For anybody wanting to start a brewery, yeah, put in a shower, and then put in an emergency eye wash too. You never know when acid or caustic's going to get sprayed all over you.
Gotcha.
I'd recommend a Band-Aid supply.
Band-Aid, yeah, Band-Aids, but that's because
Or a hard hat.
hard hats. Hard hats are definitely a must. But you got to wear them for them to work. So.
That's fun. Well, let me ask you this, guys. A lot of established breweries start to go from being a brewery to more of a beverage company. And when I kind of checked out you guys' website, you guys have some goals with ciders and wines. What is the decision behind wanting to be more than just a brewery, but also bring in those two opportunities and lanes as well?
Yeah, I think it's just simple as like we want people to be want to come, and a lot of not everybody likes beer, so we want to just have one or two offerings that aren't beer. So cider, wine. We won't be we have our farm winery permit really just for those reasons. We don't if we carry wine, it'll be a couple wines. I think Greg makes a pretty good lemon wine-ish
I don't
thing.
know what you call it.
It's
10%
pretty-
alcohol.
Yeah,
It'll leave some of your relatives laying in your backyard.
it's like a hard lemonade, but
But not carbonated.
right.
It's more
It's
like
just
that, yeah.
But so I mean, those types of things we'd like to do. We are, people that don't want to drink will have coffee. I mean, I'd like to venture into soft drinks, hard or like a hard seltzer or something, just to play around with it.
Yeah.
A mead. We're trying to source some local honey to do a mead, just to kind of, just the other offerings. But we're a brewery first and foremost, and we'll always be that. But we hope to have a couple other offerings for people that may or may not want to drink beer. So, and we've seen that. We had a couple in last week that the wife didn't like beer, so we let her try. I think it might have been the coconut midnight, and she's like, well, that's pretty good. a little bit of that's okay. But so that's really where we're at with that. We're a brewery. That's our main focus. Tap room. No, just we're not really angling for distribution. And we like to keep it intimate. Come have a couple beers here, take a 4-pack or a growler to go. And
Well, that goes back to that kind of cross-cultural reference that I made. We'd rather people come in here and hang out and have some good stories and
yeah,
poke fun or make new friends and that kind of stuff. But just offer something. The idea with the cider and wine, you offer a different drink to somebody that may not normally come to a brewery, but it just makes it a little more inviting to some people. It also gives us access to doing cool things like mead and
yeah.
Yeah, mead is where I think of all of those like things that fall under the winery permit. I think mead's the one that I could see us getting the most creative with, and maybe having more varieties of mead available, similar to the beer. But yeah, like Greg was saying, just something to offer a drink to the person that doesn't want a beer that got drunk here for at the end of the workday, or the wife that came with her husband that doesn't drink beer. So,
Or showed up because he'd been sitting here too long.
or showed up.
like my wife's sitting back there. We don't have rum or Tito's, so
Yeah,
gotta have something for it.
that's phase 2 when the wives open their own distillery.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. I see how the plans come together. Well, I like to, think of brewers as mad scientists. Is there any trends that you guys are seeing in the space? We've had a big sour movement. We've had a big, what 420's doing with the slushies and stuff like that. Any trends that you guys see as exciting or want to try yourself?
I hope the to call it a trend would be kind of odd, but lagers are becoming more and more popular.
Yeah, they are.
And it's not a trend; it's quite
Tradition.
quite literally the only
As I
beer
pour one right now.
that was made for a number of, I don't know, centuries might be an overstatement, but hopefully that catches on a little bit more, because lagers aren't macro beer. Their lagers can be pretty amazing, and hopefully that catches on. But the hop showcase with the New England style beers, I think I don't think that's going to go away.
No.
At this point, I don't think it could go away.
I mean, and we love hops, man. I love hops, and so I think one of the neat things that we have a really the Crazy Horse Hops doing some of their own, growing some varieties that grow in Indiana, and being able to showcase some of those, and actually what kind of hops Indiana can produce. I think that's pretty cool. Those types of things. So I don't know trends though. I mean, I think the sours. I really like the funky beers. The sours, like to make your face crack type sours. Not really. I mean, I like a good traditional Berliner. I would like to do one where we offer the syrup to kind of add to it. Like the Berliner was the historic German table beer, 2.5% or so, and then the whoever's drinking it can add whatever syrups they want to it to kind of flavor it, whether it's makes it more sweet and whatnot. So that would be kind of fun to do. But yeah, I don't know as far as trends go. I think they're all pretty much running. We'll figure out our niche, but
we'll try to read the tea leaves, but we're probably still going to make what people around here want to drink, and the things that we also want to drink.
And then classic styles, like one of the beers that we love to brew and we love to drink is our ESB. There's not a lot out there. I know that Great Fermentations is pushing their ISB thing. Broad Ripple Brew Pub makes a great ESB. I mean, that's a great beer. It's like I was talking to.
I think that's the same beer.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think Great
okay.
Fermentations
Gotcha.
is selling Broad Ripple's recipe.
Anyway, it's a great beer.
No
It's
less
just a
point.
classic style. It's beer flavored beer, So I mean, I think we like the hops, but we also like the traditional style beers.
Yeah.
So
I'd love to it'd be nice to gain some of the hype, you know, that you see, you know, around places, you know, and not that they don't, you know, deserve it, but like Googman, very popular, and Googman does a good job of it. They do a lot of the New England stuff that, you know, is very popular, but they sneak in these like really well executed traditional styles, and you know, same. Well, I won't go there, but yeah, I would love to just get a good following for, you know, the like what's really popular, like those or fruited sours or whatever it is, but then like get somebody here that, you know, get them to try a little 4-ounce sample of an ESB and realize like I really like that beer.
It's been pretty well received.
Yeah, it'd be awesome just to sneak in, and I say maybe not sneak in, but you know, just make well executed traditional beers, and you know, make people that are chasing the popular stuff realize that they like more than just hazy IPAs and fruited sours.
Right.
You know, which is, you know, that's popular. You know, and I love them. I'm not going to complain if I had a well executed hazy IPA to drink every single day. Like, no complaints from me. You know, but
I just run out of them because that's usually my go-to.
yeah, we just ran out of them.
Like that's why Splash was the first beer to go.
Yeah.
But I mean, we haven't brought back at any of the festivals we've gone to and we've taken bought or two. We have not brought any back. So I mean, people like it, and people, you know, it's just something they don't see normally. So I think that's kind of neat. There's a little niche market in there for that kind of stuff. And again, it gives you a chance to educate people on the beer and that style and kind of how it evolved. I mean, Greg's been to Slovakia a couple times, and you kind of neat thing, and it's not uncommon in old Europe that every town has its own brewery and its own thing. So, and that's kind of where ESP is similar to that, because like that English pub beer, you know, that's what you're going to get. It's going to be, if you say, go in there and give me a pint, I mean, they're going to probably pour you something similar to an ESB or a mild or something like that. I mean, that's what it is. So maybe 3 different beers or whatever, and there you go. So it's kind of neat, and you kind of get to talk about the history of it and the history of the beer, and you know, that regional thing. So, and that's pretty neat about the industry, and that we're fortunate to be a part of.
Fantastic. Well, let me ask you this. So as in my day gig in finance world, everything I do for my clients comes from a foundational base of education, guidance, and counseling. Now you guys are kind of on the front end of coming to soft opening, going to be doing your grand opening. I like to ask all the brewers this question because I get a varied degree of answers from guys that have just started or kind of been out for a few years to those that are well established, been around for 20, 25 years. Is what advice would you give somebody that walks in here that has continue to dabble in home brewing, but wants to see what you guys are doing, see what other people are doing, say, I want to do this for myself? What is the advice that you would give them?
Purchase your property.
Yep, that's big.
We early on we looked at a place in town that was a former movie theater, and size-wise, it was a great space, or great size. Space-wise, terrible space. It had a big slope in the floor because it was a movie theater. Yeah. You know, and it had movie theater seating in it. But they wanted, $70,000, $80,000 a year in rent, and it's like, we won't even get to like day one of opening, like paying that kind of rent. You know, right. So real estate. When we bought it, was it was and I don't know what the prices are like today, with the real estate market being as hot as it's been, but when we bought, that was one of the best decisions we made, was to buy our own place. And we lucked out, we've got this grassy lot to the south of us. Mm-hmm. That's ours, even though, it's just grass we have to mow right now. And then we have the lot to the north of us, which, so we've got room to expand both with, you know, like a beer garden or something like that to a parking lot or, you know, whatever. So if you can, I would say buy property. I think that's been one of the smarter decisions we've made.
Right. Don't have to ask anybody if we're going to tear down a wall.
Right. You don't have to request anything from a landlord. You do what needs to get done.
I think,
You know?
Well,
and it's just exponentially cheaper.
Sure. Well, that aside, if you can't avoid that, if you're trying to do a brewery, you need to trust your process. If you're still a home brewer, you gotta appreciate time, temperature, and water. Those were always the most important things that was ever explained to me. And as soon as you grasp the idea behind that, you're not going to be the best brewer, but you're going to get better at it, and that's going to be key in moving forward with whatever kind of goals you have. If you have to lease a building, that it's going to suck, but at least you got the beer to kind of.
there are
back it up
situations
and-
where, there are situations where it benefits you. I think both of those things are good. My advice would be, and really it depends. Like leasing versus buying is a financial decision too, right? Because you know you could get we probably would have been we would have been a little further along depending on what we leased, and if we had the right property, we would have probably been open a lot sooner. But I mean, budgeting is huge. We've kind of joke about it now. We were our own general contractors. That was probably not a great decision. It's kind of like the defendant that represents himself, had a fool for a client. So that probably wasn't great. But I mean, we
Best
thought
general contractors I've ever known.
yeah.
Great group of guys.
I would say take your budget, what you think it's going to cost, multiply it by 3 at least, and then take the time that you budgeted and multiply it by 2, and you're probably that's what's going to be real, because we had a good plan. We had really good help from some local sources to help develop our business plan. I think our business plan is good. It's just we just Well, and then 2020 happened, right? So I want to blame 2020 on everything. We could have been open. Had we been opened in 2020, I think we would have been fine. We would have obviously changed. We're pretty nimble because it's us four. Like, this is our business. We own it. We don't have to answer to anybody else. We don't have to, make sure. We would like the building. We would like the place to pay for itself every month. And if we do that at a bare minimum, we're going to be fine on that. But yeah, the financial side, in the budgeting, because I think we were about 3 times over budget. I would expect if we sat down and looked at the numbers.
We don't want to do that.
No, we don't. We don't. I mean, honestly, though,
You did mention we weren't here for
Hard on that.
Yeah.
Let bygones be bygones.
Yeah, but getting here to this point where the doors are open, it definitely is very rewarding. I think it's still a bit surreal to me. Even standing behind the bar and slinging beer and talking to people. It's just, this is what we had worked for. So it was worth it, but damn.
Well, great. Well, last question, and this is the question I ask everybody. When I have clients walk through my door or prospects for the first time, I ask the same question to each one. I'm not a big fan of looking out 5 years or 10 years. I think 3 years is a perfect time frame where you can show progress and then have a nice look back to say, are we on the right track? So if we were to sit down, guys, for a podcast 3 years from now, what would you want to see take place for Afterburner? It could be financially, it could be professionally, it could be emotionally, it could be anything. What do you want to see accomplished over the next 3 years that if we sat down again, we could look back and say, we're on the right track, we're living the dream, doing what we set out to do?
This would be the first time we're having this conversation, I think, to some degree. I would think in general we're getting more involved. Hopefully we're getting more involved with kind of the community efforts and the awareness campaigns and stuff that we want to do as a sense of service. Hopefully we're doing that without the pressures of opening a brand new business.
Yeah.
That would be great. You know, if we have to expand in some degree, I hope we're not the ones that have to do it. We can
We
afford to
won't
pay
be the
we can
general
afford-
contractor. We won't be the general
we
contractors.
can
I
afford
can
to pay a
promise you
general
that.
contractor.
That's right.
But we just want to be consistent in making great product and keeping people in here talking about their stories and just making a good time with it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, when we saw this property, there was another property that we were looking at that was close to downtown. I mean, I think we all, have been around long enough to see that the development of the downtown Terre Haute area. I mean, Terre Haute gets a bad rap because, I mean, there's a lot of brain drain. You got a couple of universities and, kids come to school, then they leave. Partly because there's not much for them to do. There's not that culture that they want. They're before we set up here, this is Terre Haute Brewing, and Terre Haute Brewing has gone through, some growing pains as well. So I think we see a location that's, developing. Maybe not to the extent like Fountain Square 20 years ago, but something similar to that. I mean, if you'd have walked downtown Fountain Square 20, 25 years ago, you would have been like, there's no way this is going to develop. And I'm not saying Terre Haute is Fountain Square or Indianapolis, obviously, but I think the potential is there. And I think that, the development that's going on. So I would like to see, us at least start to, maybe buy some more properties around here, kind of help the development. I think that just us being here is going to inspire others to do that and to invest in the community and in the neighborhoods. And we're only 3 or 4 blocks from the downtown area. There's a new convention center that's opening its doors next month or later this month. I mean, so I personally see a lot of, us being here, right here in this location is really not a mistake. I think we all knew that. I mean, and then we have the added benefit to having our friends at Terre Haute Brewing Company 1,000 feet to the north of us. Like,
Right.
The 2 breweries, like, in the brewing industry, that's unique because it's generally not a competition. And the ones that are competitive and, and badmouth really don't, I mean, they either don't make a good product or they're just bitter people. But having those guys up there, I mean, it's awesome. This is just great. So I see this whole, from our place all the way up to, to the downtown area expanding. So 3 to 5 years, wouldn't surprise me at all to see new businesses along this street and strip. Maybe we have some additional property. Maybe we have a newer building that we, for production. But I mean, that's, kind of like to Greg's point, we get to that point, we can start giving back, giving back and helping others, kind of help bring them up. And I'd like to see another 2 breweries in Terre Haute in the next 3 to 5 years.
Nice.
So, if not sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah, 12 Points area could use a brewery. You just got some new ownership at the former 7th and Elm area. That'd be awesome if there was another little brew pub there.
Treehouse.
It'd be awesome if Moggers, got a little brew pub in the basement, and it could be just like you mentioned Slovakia. You got, you just walk down an alley and there's a 1 hectoliter brew house. Like, you're not making a lot of beer, but you're at least serving something.
Sure.
I think
this town could totally
there's
sustain
a lot
that.
of potential
This
here.
little neighborhood could sustain that.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
kind of
we're
atmosphere.
proof of that. So,
Yeah.
we've got neighbors asking us to expand our parking lot because there's too many people parking on the streets.
Hey, that's a good sign of a good problem to have.
Well, we just assume buy the house and then park on the
We've
street.
had people park as far as 2 blocks away. We're on 9th Street. We've had people parking on 7th Street to walk down here. So it's been a good month.
Great stuff, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Well, John, Dustin, and Greg, Butch, thank you very much for your time. I enjoyed the conversation, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, everybody. Afterburner Brewing, Terre Haute, Indiana. Come see them. Come get part of the family. All right. Later. Well, that's it for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. For the latest on financial views with local brews, please check out our website at financialviewswithlocalbrews.com. You can also find us on YouTube via our channel there under the same name, Financial Views with Local Brews, as well as follow us on all of our social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, where you can like and connect with us throughout the craft beer universe that we're trying to explore here in the great state of Indiana. As always, cheers. The next round's on me, and I look forward to seeing you for future episodes. Bye, everyone.